My name is Tanya Brooks. I am 32 years old. And on a Monday morning in September, my boss fired me in front of 43 people. I know the exact number because I counted them afterward, not in the moment, but later, sitting in my car in the parking garage with my box of desk items on the passenger seat and the particular ringing quiet that follows public humiliation. 43 colleagues. 43 people who watched Victor Hale point at me across the open floor plan of Meridian Capital Group's Atlanta office and say, in a voice calibrated to carry, "Clear your desk. You're done." The office went quiet the way offices go quiet when something happens that everyone will be discussing in whispers by lunch. Every screen stopped. Every keyboard stopped. 43 people looked at me. I did not cry. I had the cry in me. I will not pretend I was made of stone in that moment. But I have never been someone who gives a public audience the specific satisfaction of watching me break, and Victor Hale was not going to be the first person who managed it. I did not argue either. I had learned, in 2 years of working for Victor, that arguing with him in public was a losing proposition not because he was right but because he was loud and persistent and had the particular advantage of being the person whose name was on the door. I stood up. I took the small cardboard box from the supply closet. I had to get it myself because no one moved to get it for me, which is a specific kind of small cruelty that I noted and set aside, and I packed my desk in the silence of 43 people watching. My laptop. My planner. The small succulent plant I had kept on the corner of my desk for 2 years. The framed photograph of my mother at her retirement party. I picked up the box. I walked to the elevator. I pressed the button. As the doors closed, I heard Victor laugh. A short, satisfied sound. The laugh of a man who has just demonstrated something to a room. 3 weeks later, his assistant called my personal cell phone. Her voice was low, almost a whisper, as if she were making the call from a position that required discretion. "The investors are here for the quarterly meeting," she said. "And they're asking for you by name." Victor took that call. I was told later, by the assistant herself, who had quietly been a reliable source of information since the day I started and who had her own feelings about the Monday morning firing, that he went very quiet when she told him. And then he asked, why her specifically? What the investors told him next made him pick up his phone and call me himself. I saw his name on the screen. I looked at it for 4 full rings. And then I smiled and let it ring. But before I tell you what actually happened, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's begin. I had been at Meridian Capital Group for 2 years and 3 months when Victor fired me. Meridian was a mid-size investment advisory firm, the kind that managed portfolios for high-net-worth individuals and institutional clients and prided itself on a combination of analytical rigor and the personal relationship management that keeps clients from moving their money elsewhere when the market gets complicated. It was good work, the kind I was suited for. I had a background in finance and client strategy from a previous position at a larger firm in Charlotte, and I had come to Meridian specifically because a smaller operation offered the kind of visibility that a large firm's hierarchy tends to obscure. What I had not fully accounted for was Victor. Victor Hale had founded Meridian 11 years earlier and had built it into a respectable operation through a combination of genuine financial instinct and the specific social fluency of a man who knows how to make wealthy people feel understood. He was effective. He was also, in the way of certain founders who have spent a decade being the smartest person in their own room, resistant to the idea that someone else might occasionally see something he had missed. I saw things he had missed. Regularly. It was not arrogance. It was the product of the analytical training I had and the particular vantage point of someone who worked directly with the client relationships rather than above them. When you sit with clients, you hear things that the person reviewing the portfolio reports does not hear. You understand not just what they want financially, but what they are afraid of, what they are planning, what their actual risk tolerance is as opposed to the theoretical one they report on intake forms. I brought what I heard into my work in ways that produced results. Client retention in my portfolio was the highest in the firm for 18 consecutive months. 2 clients who had been flagged as departure risks in the year before I came to Meridian were still there and had increased their managed assets. Victor knew the numbers. He did not always appreciate the source. The specific disagreement that led to the Monday morning firing was about a presentation I had prepared for a group of institutional investors, a consortium of 3 family offices that Meridian had been courting for 18 months, and that represented a potential relationship worth more to the firm than any single existing client. Victor had assigned me the preparation after I pushed for the meeting, which I had done because I had a relationship with one of the consortium's advisors that I had built independently over the previous year. I had prepared the presentation for 3 weeks. It was detailed, data-supported, and built around what I knew about the consortium's specific investment philosophy, which was not the same as Meridian's standard pitch and required genuine adaptation rather than template modification. Victor reviewed it 2 days before the meeting. He rewrote it. Not improved, rewrote. Substituted our standard pitch template with minor adjustments. Removed the sections I had built specifically for this audience. Said my version was too bespoke and that we needed to present Meridian's consistent identity rather than chasing what he called a niche framing. I told him, directly and in private, that he was making a mistake. That I knew this audience. That the standard template would read to them as a failure to understand what they were looking for. He told me that he had been running this firm for 11 years and that he appreciated my enthusiasm. The meeting happened. I was not invited to attend. Victor ran it himself.
The consortium passed.
Victor was not a man who received professional disappointment without distributing it. The following Monday morning at 9:15 in front of 43 people, he distributed it to me. I want to tell you what I did in the 3 weeks after the Monday morning firing because it matters for understanding what happened next. The first 2 days, I did nothing professional. I gave myself those days deliberately because I have learned that decisions made in the immediate aftermath of something like that firing carry the emotional weight of the moment and benefit from not being made immediately. On the 3rd day, I called my contact at the Investors Consortium. His name was Raymond Shen, and he was the chief operating officer of one of the 3 family offices in the group. Raymond and I had met at an industry conference 14 months earlier and had stayed in contact through a combination of shared professional interest and the recognition that tends to happen when 2 people in the same field are genuinely paying attention to the same things. I told Raymond what had happened. Not to complain, I was careful about that because complaining about a former employer to an industry contact is a particular kind of unprofessional that I had no interest in. I told him factually, I had left Meridian, and I was considering my next steps, and I wanted him to know because I valued the relationship and wanted to be transparent. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Can I ask you something directly?"
I said yes.
"The presentation Meridian brought to our meeting," he said. "Was that yours?" I told him it was not. That I had prepared one, and it had been replaced before the meeting. Another pause. Then, "I'd like to see yours." I sent it to him that afternoon. He called me back 2 days later. He had shared it with the other 2 family offices in the consortium. They would like to meet. Not with Meridian. With me. We met over coffee at a hotel in Midtown Atlanta on a Thursday afternoon. Raymond and the lead advisors from the other 2 family offices. And me, with a notebook and the updated version of the presentation that I had refined based on what I had learned from the conversation with Raymond. The meeting was scheduled for 1 hour. We were there for 2.5. At the end of it, Raymond asked me what my plans were. I told him honestly that I was in the process of deciding. He said, "We've been looking for someone to manage the consolidated portfolio advisory relationship across the 3 family offices. Someone who understands what we're actually trying to do rather than what we're supposed to want. I'd like you to consider whether that someone is you." I sat with that for a moment. Then I said, "Give me a week." The week was for due diligence mine on them. I spoke to people in my network who knew the consortium and the family offices behind it. I reviewed what I could find about their investment histories and their stated philosophies. I consulted with a trusted former colleague who had more experience with family office structures than I did. Everything I found confirmed what I had sensed in the meeting. This was a serious, principled group of investors who knew what they wanted and had not yet found the right person to help them do it. I called Raymond at the end of the week. I said yes. The arrangement was formalized the following week. Independent consulting relationship, not employment, which suited me because I had in the 3 weeks since leaving Meridian become keenly interested in not having a single employer again. The compensation was significantly better than my Meridian salary. The work was exactly what I was good at. I was 2 days into the formal arrangement when Raymond mentioned, almost in passing, that the consortium had a quarterly check-in meeting scheduled with their various advisory relationships. He mentioned that Meridian was on that list. They maintained a small legacy relationship with one of the family offices from before my time there. He mentioned, with a mild tone of someone noting a scheduling detail, that he intended to introduce me at that meeting in my new capacity.
I thought about that. I said that sounded fine.
Victor's assistant called me on a Tuesday morning. She had my personal number from the firm's records, which she had apparently retained. Her voice, when I answered, had the quality of someone making a call that required some courage on her part. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this," she said, "but I thought you should know."
She paused.
"The investors are here for the quarterly meeting, the consortium, and they're asking for you by name." I sat with that for a moment. "How is he taking it?" I asked. She stopped. "He doesn't understand yet. He thinks it's something else. He just asked why they're asking for you specifically." "What did you tell him?" "I didn't tell him anything. I told him I'd check." Another pause.
They told him themselves.
I was in the room. "What did they say?" She told me what the consortium's representative had said to Victor in the conference room at Meridian Capital Group on a Tuesday morning 3 weeks after he had fired me in front of 43 people. They had said, "Tanya Brooks is now managing our consolidated advisory relationship. We consider her one of the most perceptive client strategists we have encountered in this industry. We wanted you to know because we value transparency and because she prepared the presentation your firm brought to our initial meeting, the one we found most compelling, which we understand was not the one actually presented." Victor had gone very quiet, the assistant said. Then he had picked up his phone. His name appeared on my screen 4 minutes after I ended the call with his assistant. I watched it. The screen lit up his name and number, the number I had dialed dozens of times over 2 years with questions and updates, and the patient persistence required by working for someone who did not always make it easy. It rang once. I thought about the Monday morning, the box I had packed myself, 43 people watching, the laugh as the elevator doors closed. It rang twice. I thought about the presentation. 3 weeks of work, replaced with a template. Told my version was too bespoke. Told he had been running the firm for 11 years. It rang 3 times. I thought about Raymond Chen's voice on the phone. "Can I ask you something directly?" And then, "I'd like to see yours." It rang 4 times. I smiled. I let it ring. Victor called again the following morning, and once more that afternoon. I did not answer either call. On the 3rd day, he had his assistant call, the same assistant who had warned me from inside a conference room that something was happening. I answered for her. She said Victor would like to speak with me at my convenience. I told her, pleasantly and without drama, that I appreciated the outreach and that I was not available for that conversation. That I wished Meridian well and had no interest in any arrangement that connected us professionally going forward. She paused. Then she said, in a voice just slightly different from her professional one, "For what it's worth, Monday was wrong. A lot of us thought so." I told her I appreciated her saying that. I meant it. The work with the consortium has been the best professional experience of my career. The clarity of working directly for people who know what they want and have the patience to do things properly is something I did not fully understand. I was missing until I had it. I have thought occasionally about Victor. Not with bitterness. That would require more of my energy than he deserves, and I am not interested in spending it that way. I think about him the way you think about a situation that clarified something important, that the way someone treats you in a difficult moment tells you something definitive about whether that is a room you should be in. Victor told me, in front of 43 people, that I was done. He was describing himself. Raymond Chen asked me what I was actually trying to do, and then listened to the answer. The difference between those two things is the difference between a room that is worth your energy and one that isn't. I learned it the hard way, as most important lessons arrive. I let the phone ring, and I have not looked back since.